Hello, I'm just going to get this slideshow going and get our recording going. And I will be reading aloud from a translation of Canterbury Tales. It's a translation retold by Geraldine McCaughrean, and I will be reading it aloud. My name is Christine Carlson. I teach 12th grade British literature, and my students are reading some excerpts of Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, and I am recording this for them so that they can get an idea of kind of what's going on in the story. All right, here we go. The prologue. April rain was dripping off the branches as I rode beneath them, but the last sunlight of a fine spring day made leaves shine, and I was glad to be on my way. And I see that the slides are not transitioning. There they go. I could stay the night at the Tabard Inn in Southwark and then make a start for Canterbury by first light. The I of the person speaking right now is Chaucer, the author, and Chaucer, the narrator. But it seemed I was not the only one on the Kent road that day. As I stabled my horse, I found 20 other animals, their heads already in the manger, rending noisily at the knots of hay. Their saddles were hung up above their stalls, and as I opened the low door and ducked into the tabard's yellow warmth, my eyes stung and my nose filled with the reek of cooking and wood smoke. "Geoffrey!" roared the innkeeper, pushing his way between two priests to greet me at the door. "No one makes you more welcome than my good friend Harry Bailey, innkeeper of the Tabard. He can remember a guest's name from one year to the next, and he's always ready with a hot meal and a jug of the finest. I do believe he keeps the best inn south of the river." "You'll have good company for your pilgrimage this year, my friend," he said, beaming at me. "There must be a dozen other pilgrims in already." "It's the time of year," said a gray-headed knight sitting close by. "The spring comes round clean and fresh, and people want to put themselves right with God. Besides, the winter roads haven't been passable until now. I'm just back from Normandy, and my horse was forever knee-deep in mud over there." I liked him at once, this quiet, noble-looking man. From the mud on his jerkin, he looked as if he had traveled half Christendom, and I thought he might have a few good tales to tell. So I sat down beside him and looked around at my fellow pilgrims. What a gallery of faces! They were about as many as the letters of the alphabet, and each one equally different from his neighbor. There were priests and nuns and tradesmen, men down from the city and up from the country, guildsmen and laborers. A gawky scholar sat in a corner reading, while a gigantic woman in an enormous hat sat on the other end of his bench shouting and laughing in a voice that drowned most others. "Do you know any of these people?" I asked the knight. The lad over there is my son, you see, the one playing the lute and singing to the barmaid. He wrote the song himself. I picked him out, a handsome, curly-haired boy in an embroidered shirt. And the yeoman in the green coat, he's my boy's servingman." The door beside me opened and a smell of onions burst in, closely followed by a fright of a man. His face was covered in boils and spots and weeping sores. I swear even his sweat smelt of pickled onions, and his sweat had been with him for a long time. Yet another Christian was making his yearly pilgrimage. For the rest of the evening, pilgrims straggled into the Tabard and paid for a meal, a blanket, and a cup or two of mulled wine. By 8 o'clock there were 30 of us, all bound for Canterbury. Cattle drovers, travelling up from the Old Kent road, put their heads round the door, saw the crowd, and went back to sleep with their cows. Oh, let's just play this again. My friend the innkeeper was enjoying excellent business, and it put him in a particularly agreeable mood. I was just thinking of going to bed when he banged down his mug on the table and called out, "Listen here, friends! You'll all ride as a party tomorrow, won't you?" "Only sensible," said a brusque, quick-eyed fellow. "Thieves, highwaymen, Kent, notorious, only sensible." "Well, I've got a mind to go with you," said Harry Bailey, "but I know that ride. It's a long time to sit on a hard saddle. Let's liven up the journey with a competition. Each of us can tell a story, and whoever tells the best will get a free dinner on the way back. The rest of us will foot the bill." "Yes, yes!" Most of us cheered and stamped our feet, although the scholar in the corner went on reading his book, hearing nothing. "I'll be the judge, and the judge's word is final," Harry declared, grinning broadly. Well, perhaps a vote," said a pale-eyed man with a few strands of blonde, wispy hair. But our host cut him off short. "And anyone who quarrels with my rules pays the expense of the entire trip." "Yes, done!" "Agreed! Settled!" The blond man was silenced by more stamping and clapping and cheering as the warm wine settled comfortably on our stomachs, and we all began to feel like lifelong companions. Some clergymen pointed out that St. Paul called the storytelling an unholy waste of time, but we managed to ignore him. Quite soon the wine settled heavily on our eyelids, too, and one by one we went upstairs to the rickety cribs of the Tabbards' dormitory. I lay down and began racking my brains for a story to tell. My Canterbury pilgrimage promised to be more entertaining than usual. I wouldn't like you to think that I was looking forward more to the stories than to visiting the shrine of holy St. Thomas. But there's more to be said for pilgrimages than just seeing a holy place. You often meet such extraordinary people on the way. Next morning we were stumbling about the yard in the cold and dark, in a welter of horses and a net of rain. A shape I had mistaken for the gate-post, and who proved to be the miller, cursed the weather and wished himself home in bed. "'Tis not but God's holy water to bless us on our way," said the gentle voice of the ploughman, as he packed straw under his saddle in place of a rug. I began to work out who everybody was and which of the pilgrims were traveling together. The parson, who disapproved of stories, was the ploughman's brother. The noisy, evil-smelling individual with the horrible face was also a religious gentleman, a summoner, traveling with a pale, giggling pardoner, who had long, sparse blonde hair. I had to look twice to see if it was not a woman. The biggest party was made up of master craftsmen. Suspicious of Kent's inns, they had even brought along their own cook, a man stuffed as full of recipes as a sucking pig with apples. To hear him talk made your mouth water. If he had just stopped drinking and picking that sore on his leg, I might have employed him myself. From the tangle of reins I sorted out my own, mounted, dismounted, told the ship's captain he was on my horse, and helped him onto his. Very soon, like a row of chessmen escaping from the chessboard, we ambled off the paved yard and into the quagmire of the drover's road. Gradually, as the light strengthened, I could make out the different colors of clothes, the different quality of the horses, the pale, bleary faces of the silent readers. Beside me, the knight's chainmail began to shine like fish's scales in the half-light. Suddenly, through the mist loomed a horrible sight. A massive dark shape, bristling all over with long curved spines, was shuffling toward us, enveloped in a smell as thick as fog. I reined my horse in. The knight beside me gave a great round laugh that set his chain shirt clanking. "You city people! Anyone you would think you'd never seen or heard of cows before." Then a steer raised its curved horns and bellowed. The drovers with their long whips emerged from the mist, and the herd swept past and between us as if we were ghosts. "I was all set to run home and hide under the bed," I admitted, laughing shamefacedly. "I'm no St. George when it comes to fighting dragons. I never could see the point in gallantry. Ugh!" I could have kicked myself. The knight had spent most of his life fighting in one war or another. But he smiled generously and said, "I agree, Master Chaucer. There's far too much unnecessary killing nowadays among these fashionable young knights. Life's too precious. Fights to the death ought to be over matters of life and death. That's my opinion." I never had much time for Palamon and Arcite. "Who?" Then Harry interrupted. He was holding out a bundle of straws to each rider, saying, "Take one. Take a straw." "What's this for?" I asked, pulling out a long straw. "You're all so modest. I can't get anyone to tell the first story. So we're drawing straws. The person who draws the short straw tells the story first." "Oh dear," said the knight, holding up the short straw. "I'm not sure I know any stories." His face began to redden with shyness as the riders surrounded him, gaping at him expectantly. "What about Palamon and Arcite?" I suggested. "Ah, yes, just so. Right." He cleared his throat, looked around him with a plea for patience, and began, the first unwilling entrant into our competition. Thus ends the prologue. Thank you for listening.